The sky wasn't supposed to bleed like that. Thick streaks of crimson tore through the inky blackness, swirling around the massive silver behemoth hovering above Earth. Commander Elara Voss stood at the edge of the observation deck, her reflection fractured by the trembling glass. "Is that normal?" whispered Lieutenant Dax, his wide eyes glued to the apocalyptic display. "No, Dax," Elara replied, her voice sharp but laced with awe. "Nothing about humans is ever normal. The vessel, the Arkosis, wasn't built by humans. It was alien, ancient, and yet somehow responding to the Earth's collective consciousness. The crew had assumed it would be simple: make contact, establish peace, maybe even share a drink under unfamiliar stars. But they hadn't accounted for humanity's most dangerous trait, its sheer, unrelenting madness. The Arkosis had been quiet for hours, its engines humming like the breath of a sleeping giant. Then, the bleeding sky. Then, the voices. "You hear that?" Dax's fingers trembled over the console, his ears straining. A soft, melodic hum echoed through the deck, forming words in languages that shouldn't coexist. Ancient Sumerian layered beneath modern Mandarin, interwoven with whispers and dialects no human had ever spoken. "It's singing?" Dax's voice cracked. "No," Elara corrected. "It's remembering." A holographic sphere flickered into existence before them, spinning with impossible speed. Images burst forth, planets collapsing, civilizations rising, stars burning out like fragile candles. Among them, a single repeating figure, a human silhouette, always present at every disaster. Elara's heart raced. "What if we weren't humanity's first attempt?" she murmured. The ship's AI, Cora, crackled to life. "Commander, the Arkosis is mirroring Earth's neural patterns. It's studying us." "Studying?" Dax blinked. "For what? To decide if we're worth saving, or if the cycle repeats." A low rumble shook the deck as the Arkosis began to fracture, its metallic surface peeling back like petals. From within, hundreds of crystalline drones floated out, each one gleaming with a pulse identical to a human heartbeat. Dax backed away. "Commander, these things, they're sinking to us." Elara's mind raced. Was this a test? A punishment? Or something? "Worse?" a voice echoed, deep and resonant, vibrating through their bones. "We see your madness, the chaos, the brilliance. Are you the creators or the destroyers?" Elara clenched her fists. "We're both." The Arkosis pulsed, its light flickering as if contemplating her answer. The crimson sky above twisted, spiraling into a massive rift. And from the depths of that rift, something moved. "This is getting wild." "Elara," Dax whispered, "do we go through or do we fight?" Elara's eyes locked onto the swirling void. "The question isn't if we should, but if we can." The humming intensified, and the Arkosis responded, opening pathways, choices, that could lead to salvation or utter annihilation. But which door would humanity choose? Elara's breath caught in her throat as the swirling rift expanded, its edges crackling with violet lightning. The crystalline drones hovered closer, their mirrored surfaces reflecting twisted images of the crew, faces distorted with fear, wonder, and something darker. "Commander," Cora's voice echoed, clipped and tense. "Energy levels inside the rift are destabilizing. If we enter, there's a 92% chance of..." "Of what?" Dax interrupted, his voice rising in panic. "Annihilation," Cora finished flatly. The observation deck vibrated as the Arkosis shifted its massive form, angling directly toward the rift as if drawn by an unseen force. Elara steadied herself, staring at the endless swirl before them. "Dax," she said softly, "you ever wonder why it's always us? Humans, I mean. We touch everything. Planets, ecosystems, species, and we break them. But somehow, we survive." Dax hesitated before answering. "Because we're insane." Elara almost smiled. "Exactly." The crystalline drones began aligning in intricate patterns, forming symbols that pulsed in midair. Equations, maps, warnings. One symbol in particular caught Elara's eye. A spiral, identical to the one swirling in the sky, but within its center was something unmistakable. Earth. "It's a map," she whispered. "But to what?" Cora processed the data. "The Arkosis is presenting a choice. Enter the rift and confront what lies beyond, or stay and allow the cycle to repeat." Elara's fingers hovered over the control panel. Her crew's faces reflected in the glass, a mixture of hope and dread. A low growl echoed from the rift. Shapes, massive, serpentine, writhed just beyond the veil, their scales shimmering like fractured galaxies. "This is getting wild," Dax muttered, backing away. Elara turned to him, determination hardening her gaze. "We go through, but not because we're reckless, because we have to know what's on the other side." The crew scrambled to their stations as Elara initiated the sequence. The Arkosis groaned, its colossal engines roaring to life. The crystalline drones parted, forming a gateway through the bleeding sky. As the ship lurched forward, Elara felt a strange pull, not on her body but on her mind. Thoughts twisted, memories flickered. She saw flashes of her childhood, her first mission, the moment she signed up for this journey. But within those memories, something was wrong. A voice, soft and familiar, whispered in her ear. "You've been here before." Her heart pounded. "Who said that?" No one answered. The Arkosis breached the edge of the rift, and for a moment, everything stopped. Sound, movement, even thought itself. Then, in an explosion of light and gravity, the ship was flung into a vast expanse unlike anything they had ever seen. Planets with impossible geometry floated in the void, rivers of liquid light weaving between them. And at the center of it all, a colossal structure, spiraling endlessly, its surface covered in human symbols and scripts from countless eras. Dax gasped. That's a Dyson Sphere, but built by humans?" Cora's voice crackled with static. "Data confirms. This structure predates Earth." Elara's mind reeled. "How is that possible? Did we build this before we even existed? Before anyone could answer?" The ship shuddered violently. Beams of light shot out from the sphere, locking onto the Arkosis. A new voice boomed in their minds, clear and powerful. "You have come. Again." Elara clenched her fists. "Who are you?" "We are you." The voice replied, "The versions that came before, and the ones that will come after." The crew stood in stunned silence. Elara finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Is this destiny or madness?" The voice chuckled, deep and resonant. "With humans, there is no difference." The beams of light grew brighter, pulling the Arkosis toward the spiraling sphere. Elara had a choice: break free and return to the known, or dive deeper into the impossible truth. Her hand hovered over the controls. Which would she choose? The spiraling Dyson Sphere loomed closer, its colossal structure dwarfing even the Arkosis. The beams of light holding the ship grew denser, threads of energy twisting around the hull like vines claiming prey. Elara's heart raced as she hovered over the manual override. "Cora, give me options!" "Minimal," Cora replied, her voice laced with static. "The gravitational pull is increasing exponentially. Breaking free now could tear the Arkosis apart." Dax's hands shook as he clung to the console. "Commander, we can't just let it pull us in. What if it's a trap?" Elara's eyes narrowed, watching the spiraling sphere. "Or what if it's an invitation?" The voice from the sphere echoed again, as if it had been listening. "You fear what you do not understand, typical." Elara clenched her jaw. "If you're really us, some future version, why bring us here? Why now?" The sphere pulsed, light rippling across its endless surface. "Because the cycle is breaking, and only madness can mend it." "This is getting wild," Dax mumbled, stepping away from the console. The Arkosis moved forward, now fully encased in the beams of light. The ship's metal creaked under the pressure, but instead of being crushed, it began to change. The walls shimmered, becoming translucent, revealing the vastness of the sphere beyond. Through the transparent walls, the crew saw glimpses, entire worlds rotating inside the sphere. Oceans that floated in midair, forests of crystal, cities that bent gravity itself. Are those human colonies? Dax gasped. Cora scanned the visuals. Affirmative, but none of these exist in our records. Elara's mind raced. Alternate timelines? Failed versions of humanity? The voice returned, softer now. Possibilities. Every time humanity spiraled into chaos, we salvaged what we could. You're standing at the threshold, the point where sanity fractures and infinite paths emerge. Elara's thoughts clouded, but a single question burned through the haze. Why show us this? What do you want? To see if this version of humanity is finally ready. Suddenly, the Arkosis jolted, and the crew was flung into weightlessness. The beams dissolved, leaving the ship hovering just above a massive platform inside the sphere. The observation deck flickered, and in front of Elara, a figure materialized. It was human, or at least, it looked like it. Tall, draped in metallic, robes that shimmered with constellations, its face was a perfect mirror of Elara's own. Dax nearly fell backward. "Commander, that's you." Elara stared into the reflection of herself, her mind reeling. "What is this?" The mirrored Elara smiled faintly. "A lesson. We are the architects of our own madness, Elara. You came here because you had to see it, to understand." Elara's reflection extended a hand. "But now you must choose. Take your crew and return to your timeline, preserving the chaos, or stay and become something more, something beyond human." The deck fell into a suffocating silence. Dax's voice was barely a whisper. "Commander, we're not ready for this." Elara's heart pounded in her chest. The choice was hers, insanity or evolution. She reached out her hand, fingers trembling. But which path would she take?